Hello, hello. Today is December 5th, 2023. It's a SIG Node weekly meeting. Welcome, everybody. Today we have quite a few items on the agenda, mostly trying to plan for 1:30, but the first topic is from Todd. Todd, do you want to speak up?
Yeah, sure. So back in May, I brought to SIG Node this new C group v2 feature for out-of-memory killing, where you could basically configure C group so that if a single process was out-of-memory killed, it would kill all the processes within the C group. So what that means for containers is that if a single process in the container got killed, all the processes in the container would get killed simultaneously. And I brought it to the SIG Node to discuss, like, do we need a KEP to use this? And sort of thought was that at that point, the answer was no, because the docs all talked about containers getting killed, and it was sort of, at least my understanding was that containers getting killed simultaneously or as a unit was sort of preferable behavior to what was occurring previously, which was individual processes would get container or would get killed, and sometimes your container would just get sort of hung if you didn't handle that situation correctly. So now this is the sort of first feedback from a user that was relying on that behavior. They had sort of gave two examples: one where they're expecting child processes to get out of memory killed, and then they want to continue, and another one where they were like chaining together a couple of make jobs, and the first one would get killed sometimes, and then it would fall back to running with less parallelism the second time. So I was trying to figure out what's the sort of next step.
Yeah, I want to add to this topic that we discovered some systemd degradation recently related to the same topic. So I think 1.14 systemd has a similar behavior change. I can try to dig up the GitHub link, but basically on one of the systemd versions, all the processes will be killed with when happens. So I think use case here that I hear about is people trying to orchestrate their own processes, and mostly because they hit all sorts of limitations of Kubernetes. So let's say they have uh, too many processes to run, and if they move every process into separate container and separate pod, then they will hit a limit of how many pods they run on a single node, or limit how often, like how fast this pods will be scheduled. They cannot like sustain the load that they want. And the problem is, like, they basically applying this workaround, and I heard of two workarounds so far. First workaround is to have a simple pod that will orchestrate Docker containers. So they from their pod they run Docker commands to run containers inside this node. So those will be unaccounted. And another workaround is to run processes inside the container. And basically what people are complaining about is this change. When we made the decision, we made it based on the fact that there are many other scenarios, like let's say eviction will happen, and eviction will never take into account that like single process is too heavy, so it will not try to kill a single process, it will evict the whole pod. Other kills will behave the same. So like we have few scenarios when this self-orchestration wouldn't work quite well. And I mean, we all understand that this is a hack. The only question is how much we want to support this hack, and how much we can say just go and hack C groups on your own, like run it as like, since you're already orchestrating your processes, you may also just go into C group and change the setting yourself. Basically, that's the question. I know if anybody has an opinion here, how much you want to support this use case, and how much you want to just suggest other workarounds.
Maybe adding an option is the right thing to do. The default being the new behavior, and then folks that either want the old behavior or support these use cases can toggle it.
So if we introduce the setting, we will not promise anything else, right? So just kill behavior will be different. We don't want to support scenarios and like on eviction, instead of evicting entire pod, we will try to evict processes first. So nothing like that, right?
Yeah, I don't think so. I mean, that's entirely separate. Yeah.
Is it knob on a per container basis or on a per pod basis or on a per node basis? What's the
I'm thinking, Derek, maybe a node may be enough, but then folks may need override at the pod level. Maybe we start with the node and see if that's enough.
So you're talking about a kubelet.
Yeah, at the kubelet level. Yeah.
Let you turn this off on the node.
Yep.
So it's so for entire node, you mean?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I think it's reasonable. Like, I think people who will want it will probably benefit from that. Do you want to backport it to 120? When we did 127, right? When we did it.
Thought it was 127. Yeah.
Ron, do you have an opinion? Do you want to backport to 127?
Not a strong opinion, but I wouldn't push back against it if folks are interested in that one.
knob a flag on the kubelet or what would be the signaling mechanism? I guess what I'm wondering is there also a way to just configure the host OS to get the V1 behavior on a V2 system? Like, if we add a knob in the kubelet, is that taking effect globally on the host or just on C groups managed by the kubelet? And is there a global override?
Yeah, I don't know if there's a global override. I know we set something in the secrets.
Yeah, the ones managed by the kubelet will be affected. Yeah.
A lot of these fields have a default in the kernel, and some C group fields inherit from their parents. But I'm going to look at the documentation. But I'm guessing that they just default to not doing this and don't inherit from their parents. So said it would have to be a kubelet field, and then it would have to be set on each pod if that's the case. Yeah, it just defaults to 0. So it just defaults to not doing this. It doesn't like inherit from its parent or anything like that.
So kubelet flag, and we will cherry pick to 127. Okay.
Yeah, works for me.
So do you mind to implement it?
No.
Is it something you can do? Thank you. Okay. Thank you, Todd. Next topic. I'm thinking if we need to reorder it a little bit to handle other topics first before we go into planning. So maybe Peter, do you want to cover your topic?
Yeah, let's do that. Okay, so this is this is about the ensure secret pulled image that Paco and Mike were working on. I was hoping Paco would be here, but the time doesn't work very well for him. So I'm sure he'll see this in the recording. Hello, Paco. Let's see. Basically, at some point in the past, it was determined that the state of the that the kubelet keeps for figuring out which images that were pulled were corresponding to which auth that was used to pull it, it was decided that that should be checkpointed so that when the kubelet restarts or the node restarts, we inherit those values. And Mike and I chatted about this last week, and I don't know, I have this feeling that it adds a lot of complexity, and maybe it could be better to not do the checkpointing. The rationale for that is a couple of things. One of them is the authentication map that the kubelet keeps actually resets every 2 hours. So the amount of time that the kubelet would like be caching this value is pretty low right now. So that's one thing. Adding the additional overhead for the, like, mostly what I'm trying to optimize is for the amount of code that exists for this feature, like maintaining our own state file and making sure that, you know, that stays valid and everything like that. The other reason that I don't know if it's strictly necessary is, you know, this feature, the point of it is to force there to be more auth requests that happen. So like the kubelet will go down and ask to pull the image more frequently. And optimizing it for basically when the kubelet restarts or the node restarts, like those should be fairly infrequent operations. Like I don't expect the node, like the kubelet to restart more than, I don't know, all that frequently. You know, maybe on an upgrade, the node will restart, or, you know, but by and large, that at runtime, like, you know, kubelet should just be running. And so I think that I want to propose for this feature that we just do away with the checkpointing entirely, and have the kubelet recreate the map each time that it starts up. And for all of the images that every pod requests, it will check that a pull image happens, basically as if it's starting for the first time, even if there are images cached on the node. The one caveat of that is that in a disconnected use case, when a process pre-populates the images, those images won't be accessible because it's disconnected. You know, assuming that the disconnected means in this case, you know, there is some subset of images that are being run that aren't like being mirrored to a registry that the node does have access to. So that use case will be broken, but I think that that's a reasonable compromise to make to reduce the amount of overhead code-wise for this feature. So what do people think?
I put the proposal that pull never be have an additional option for actually not reauthing. Remember we talked about that a little bit. So during the first review, Sergey and crew, Don, everybody, when it came down to why do we need to persist, it really was in order for a longer period of time to be named later, right? We're starting with 2 hours, but it could be 2 months, right? The issue we're running into is in order to support the pull never policy, as well as the pull if not present policy, we had an issue of, well, what happens if kubelet restarts and now the image is in the cache? Is that a preloaded image, or is that an image that somebody pulled with authorization? And if you're making the assumption that it was pulled with authorization, then sure, pull never works fine, and pull if not present works fine after the reboot. But we really don't know at that point in time whether or not it was pulled with authorization. And because it's present, we're not going to pull it, because we're going to assume it was either pulled successfully with an anonymous request, or it was preloaded, right? Because of those two scenarios, the pull never preloads and the pull if not present, because it was preloaded or because it was pulled anonymously, we didn't have the information we needed to know. And the assumption was, well, with persistence, then we should know, and the customers would have this expectation. But I think if we had an option in there beyond pull never and pull if not present, to actually state that with this feature gate on, we're going to recheck. You got to turn off the recheck feature gate, for example. Otherwise, we'll be rechecking for all purposes so that we're secure by default. You would really have to have a hard scenario where you want these to be anything in the cache when it reboots to be presumed to be anonymous or preloaded. Okay. So I think that's the proposal.
And as a clarification, option in this case means a kubelet option. So basically, like as a way to enable this feature, you need the feature gate, obviously, but then past that, in addition to, you also need a kubelet option so that users could toggle whether they want to ensure this pulled secret behavior regardless. But that would then be them opting into allowing for the kubelet to deny a pod to use an image if it doesn't have a direct path of authentication to get to that registry.
Yep.
Even if it's present on the node already, which I think is the intent of the feature generally, and sort of in the spirit of that.
Yeah. As a reminder for everybody, what the clouds have to do today is they have to they modify every pod's policy to pull always if they're multi-tenant, for example, or if they want to make sure that there's revalidation, then they have to pull always. So there's no caching of the image except for the blob portions of the image. We recheck manifests if you ask for pull always. So, which is what this feature was supposed to fix. You don't have to use pull always.
Right.
You can start using pull if not present. Effectively, this change.
I had a quick question, Mike, on that from a policy standpoint, like as a cloud operator, the ability to what is the desire or the period of time in which the auth would be recertified, right? Like,
yeah.
We
just threw a dart at the wall and said, what about a couple hours? But I think we changed it in persistence to be configurable with the feature gate. So there would be an option for how long that would be and let the admins decide. What we'd really like to have, Derek, is a policy be added to the pod for cache policy, specifically stating whether or not this could be shared with other pods, other users, and or for how long. And we're working at the OCI level. We've had some conversations with this in our new auth work group to actually try to figure out how we can get a duration timeout value from the registries themselves so that the person who pushes the image can state this is going to be valid, right? Or this repo is valid, for up to, a cached number of days, for example. Because there's a couple of reasons why the image could go bad, right? One, it's latest and you're checking, well, we'll check that way anyway, or you're asking for a tag and maybe they've deleted the image, right? Or maybe this user ran out of permission, his creds are gone, and he was the one that pulled the image, so we got to get rid of it. So we need those timeout reasons to come back from the registry into the client so that we can store that information. But we'll need a pod policy for you guys to be able to push down that policy down, right?
Yeah, I think the motivation for my question is I was thinking about environments that are mostly connected but need to survive periods of disconnect. And if we had a way of expressing, or if the intent was to have a way of expressing that, I allow up to 7 days of disconnect before you must re-auth this image pool, and if there was an option that had that type of thing.
Good idea. Didn't come up in any of our conversations that you would have a, full if not present or never for a certain number of days. That's an interesting, policy as well. Where will we specify it? Days of the week that you're going to use it, time of day might be a good idea, right? For when you could pull images, like 3 a.m. to.
Yeah, mostly, like I said, in environments where you're mostly connected, it's just like a performance optimization to not want to go and do the auth check.
Right.
But then in environments where you have to have periods of maybe spotty connection or disconnect, having to then fall back to if not present or pre-cache things can not be as convenient either. So I was just trying to think through that squishy.
Yeah, and there's also that other pattern where some registries require you, if you don't have a paid account, for example, you might only get the first, 100 attempts to pull an image, right? Rechecks. So you don't want to recheck until next out or something, a delay for that reason as well, right? There could be a number of, we probably need a way to do plugins or extensions for that. We already have one at the NRI level for the container runtimes, but again, we don't have that yet in Kubelet, but that would be a good idea to figure out how we could share that, those kinds of ideas for extensions.
I think to start, with this feature, I think that there is a certain amount of like assumption of connection that an admin would have to make to enable this feature. And I think that that's a reasonable compromise because we're basically trading a more secure environment. Like, the images aren't able to be shared. So we're like being more strict about in a multi-tenant scenario versus, the optimization of like we're maybe doing unnecessary auth checks and maybe not have that sort of connection all the time. So part of my reason of thinking like the checkpointing wasn't really necessary was like that's part of the sort of trade-off that we're making.
Those good questions, Dirk. Thanks, Peter. Anybody have any other questions?
Cool. So this will in part also depend on Paco's thoughts on it. So we'll probably have to sync up offline about this, but we can also pick this up in the 130 KEP cycle and debate over it there as well, if anyone has any additional thoughts. But it sounds like there's no serious pushback to dropping the checkpointing capability.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that, I don't know how debates will go, but we will need to make sure that whatever decision is made is well documented and end users are not super surprised. So maybe even add some extra warnings in code that will help to troubleshoot the situation.
Yeah, good point. All right, sounds good. Thanks, team.
Okay, next topic is planning for 130. And we didn't want to start planning of all the caps because I don't know how attendance will be today. And yeah, obviously it's not very high. So what we wanted to do is to walk through very old feature flags and try to understand what we can maybe GA or drop in 130. So maybe somebody can take an action item and follow up on one of those. So all feature gates, first is up armor. Up armor feature is currently in beta. We have somebody tried to GA at some point. It is GA from many perspectives because many cloud vendors using it, some security, like I think even a SIS, like a security advisory thingy, suggests to enable up armor and it's beta features. But yeah, I think it's de facto is GA already, but we need to formally move it to GA, and to do that, I think we mostly need to look at tests and understand that we have enough tests and everything is covered. So if you want to take a look at this, please speak up. Okay. Next one is custom CPU CFS quota period. I don't remember the status of it. I think somebody looked at it at some point, but I'm not sure if it's moving forward.
Peter, can you take a look at that one and see if it's something of interest? Because I know
Yeah,
you've been
I'll
in that
take
area
a
of the code recently. Yeah.
Sorry.
Okay. Then a couple graceful node shutdown flags. One is just a feature itself, and another one is termination based on pod priority when termination is longer than some like couple minutes or stuff.
So I think, Ryan, do you have the latest? So I think we were trying to enable it and we saw some issues with some of the controllers not reacting well when this is enabled. So I think we probably need to get those issues fixed before we graduate it. Would definitely make sense to move this forward.
Is it the issue for both or just for pod priority based?
Should be both because it's yeah, just how it's configured. Yeah.
Yeah, we've seen issues with both. But these are feature gates, so we might be able to remove them since the feature is already in there.
Do you mean GA feature even though there is an issue with controllers?
I thought it was GA already, but is it still beta?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Then
I
we're
would-
trying to decide if we want to GA something and then address more issues.
Yeah, we should probably address the issues, I think.
Yeah, we should have a proper answer for those operator issues, controller issues rather. Yeah.
Yeah, and if they are not documented on cap issue, can you please add a comment there?
Ryan, could you
Yeah.
take that on? Thanks.
Okay.
Okay. Local storage capacity isolation FS quota monitoring.
Is this the XFS quota one?
I think so.
Did this just go beta? Like Paco re-enabled it recently, right?
I think this one we don't want to do anything for. It needs to for some time, right? Maybe.
Yeah, I think so too. We need to soak it.
It's alpha since 1.15, and I don't think it went to beta. I think we discovered some issues with that. That's why we didn't want to go to beta, and we're arguing if we need to go back to.
I think if I remember correctly, the problem was that a user inside a pod can go and change the quota that's assigned to them. So we'll probably need to check with kernel folks and file system folks if that's something that can be fixed on the kernel side. I think it's a good feature. It's just that right now there are holes.
Yeah.
So do you want to keep it in alpha and?
Yeah, maybe have an action to check with kernel folks on that one.
Okay. So yeah, thank you, Kevin, for sharing the PR from Paco to promote this to beta. Yeah, I think the comment from PR, I don't remember exactly what I commented on, but I think I commented on some known issue there. So do you want to ping Paco to check his kernel?
Paco may cannot. I'm not sure who. I guess we need obviously the menu maybe have the
Yeah,
more.
yeah, I think, yeah, I'll get it. Like Peter, I know the two of us were looking at it last some time ago. Maybe we can chase down the.
Yeah, I can.
Yeah.
Yeah, Mrinal and I can take on.
Yeah.
Finding someone.
Thank you, Peter, and Manu. Yeah. And
Yeah.
I want to comment on the AppArmor. AppArmor only available on some of the operating systems. So this is why community, most people involved in the SIG Node community nobody can except GK folks, Googlener, have the context because nobody using AppArmor model. So we got to figure out, Sergey, you and I have to figure out who can pick up. Otherwise, we need to go like the Ubuntu folks. So we need to figure out, yeah. If the kernel have the deadline and the timeline to how to address this problem, I think then we can reach out to the Paco to say move forward. Otherwise, really, this just stay on the alpha.
Yep, makes sense.
Okay. So next one is memory manager. Francesco, if you can comment on that.
Hello. Work started in early 129 cycle, and we got as far as the PRR review. The PRR reviewer were unhappy about the lack of observability, which, truth to be told, I also in general agree with in the context of J process. Anyway, so there was raised as a concern. So I think we have this prerequisite, which probably can be accounted in this process. I, for myself, I will happy to keep working on that. I need to check with a teammate of mine if they could still spend bandwidth on that, but I will follow through and report to this forum what's going on.
Thank you for pushing it forward. Okay, memory cores. I think we decided to.
Sorry, there was a bunch of issues that were open related to memory manager as well. I think I had flagged that when I was reviewing the KEP that was when it was being graduated last cycle. So I think that needs to be addressed as well. And if I understand correctly, we need to fix those bugs and issues before we can actually proceed towards GA graduation.
This is very right. Thank you for the reminder.
Okay, thank you. Memory queues. I think the decision was made to cut that feature, and because we found that kernel behaving differently than we expected.
So are we pausing it, or do we want to try to find some other feature, some other way forward? I'm not sure. Yeah.
I mean, there's a possibility, right? So we can try to.
So I think the swap folks were looking at some kernel stats to make eviction work. So I connected David and folks with that team. So maybe we can check if there's something that can be reused there.
Yeah, scenarios that I heard for memory cores is hit the throttling and then try to adjust dynamically. So use some sort of in-place update for memory. But I don't know how much.
Yeah, the other, the idea of that Dixie and Antique sort of presented, but like using PSI metrics to be this signal and then, dynamically changing something either with VPA or like, internally. But I do think that there's something to be said about how the current memory QoS KEP is out of date. Like we're not going to go down that route because of the limitations that it has. So like maybe it makes sense to just scrap it and move forward in a different way.
Okay. Yeah, I support it, especially Sasha pointed out that there is an NRI plugin to experiment further. That will help.
Yep, sounds good.
Okay. Okay. Next is something that we've been working on now and then. I don't know the status for one person. For metrics, stats from CRI.
Yeah, so this is basically stalled on CRI implementation support for the metrics. We're working on it in Cryo, and I would love to have it in 129, which might not make it at this point. In Cryo, I know I chatted with I forget what her name is, who worked on Containerd, who volunteered to look at it for Containerd, but I haven't heard anything in a couple of months. So it's kind of paused. I'd love to push it forward, but I would need some help from folks on the Containerd side because not my area. So if anyone, can find some capacity who kind of focuses more on Containerd, please reach out, and I'd love to help out to push this forward.
No, I know we discussed that there may be some performance issues with that, and we may need to have more tests on that. Is there something you want to speak about?
Yeah, I mean, basically it's a criteria, right? We don't want to be regressing performance compared to C advisor. So I think it's already captured in the CAP.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if there will be implementation of 129 Cryo, I would be really interested in performance results to understand how much work needed for Containerd as well.
Totally. Yeah, I think that part of the responsibility of the performance will be on the CRI implementation, so it might differ a little bit between the two, but I think that it'll be interesting to see sort of how it compares, especially because Cryo is still using the C advisor stats provider. So it'll be kind of more of a direct comparison where C advisors or Containerd is kind of using both.
Okay. Next one is rotate kubelet service certificate, and it's a very old feature. Everybody using that. There is no controversy about it, and at some point, CAP was blocked on making sure that we have a mechanism on API server how to distinguish which certificate to give, but they waived this requirement. Like SIG auth waived this requirement, saying that let's make this CAP only about kubelet side. That said, the problem with this feature is that it exists and it's working, but it's not tested at all. So there is not almost zero tests, like maybe a couple unit tests here and there, but the feature itself is not tested. So whoever wants to pick it up to GA, we mostly need to do cleanup and testing and documentation. Okay, if anybody knows somebody who wants to join community and try something relatively straightforward, this is a good candidate for that.
Harshal or Kevin, do you guys want to pick it up?
Yeah, sure. Sounds good.
Okay, assign Harshal to it. Yeah.
Thank you. And finally, size memory backed volumes. I think it's in beta for a long time and it's in good shape. We just need to flip the flag to GA, I think, mostly. Is anybody interested? Okay. And it's not that old, it's like reasonably old, but so it can wait another release if needed. Okay, then I think we get to the end of perma beta elimination, and another thing we need to decide whether we want to start cgroup v1 deprecation and announce some sort of plan for deprecation in cgroup v1. It's already on Google. We already default to cgroup v2 in GKE for at least, not on every place. So I wonder how situation is in different clouds and whether we can find some volunteers to at least publish the plan and put some clarity there.
Yeah, I think we can gather feedback. Definitely supportive of announcing deprecation, so we give enough time to folks to upgrade to V2 if they aren't already on it. I'm not sure, Don. What do you think? Maybe 3 releases, 4 releases?
I think once we announced, always 1 year, right?
Right.
So
Okay.
no, which is means 3 needs at least, right? So that's kind of a policy we required. But in the past, even 1 year, sometimes we delayed. So I want, because this is the kernel, and so I'm okay to give a little more time. But can we start some like the pre-announce to say we are going to Kubernetes going to deprecate, till we can proactively get some feedback. Otherwise, I feel I don't want to like last time, like container DDoS share. We have all those plans, but we actually spent a couple years to carry both. From day one, we plan to deprecate, and we spend years and carry both.
I think like internally, I've been doing those pre-announcements a lot, Don, but I think what will help is people want to see something official. So
Yeah.
I always point them to the system deprecation, right? So if Kubernetes were to make that, that will motivate folks more. They'll say,
So-
okay, where is the official announcement saying it's...
Yeah. So maybe we should just official make that announced.
Yeah, and then we can decide, right, whether it takes more time if we have bugs and yeah.
Help the people to
Right.
advocate such movement, and then they are proactively send the feedback to us. Maybe that's the right approach. Let's just announce then.
Okay,
And
sounds
then we got the feedback, and yeah, people maybe just, but I just want to warning people, maybe once we announce, they may have the chain. Hopefully don't this time, but they always have the chain. And in the past, and then we maybe have to be busy to deal with those chain.
Right.
And yeah, let's just do
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
So I think as first steps, we can announce deprecation and start making sure that all the tests are run on cgroup v2 as a primary target and cgroup v1 as a second.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know I ran into some cases where the Ubuntu test would by default use cgroups v1. So I know that I had to make some changes for swap to get those to work correctly. So that's just when we do that, we should be.
We can announce that to the Ubuntu team. I think because last time when we GA, they made the SIG v2 as the default, and then I stopped them because I said, wait, GA is starting like we are going to, that's the default. That's the GA, and between the default, actually sometimes some feature, especially for SIG feature, there's the difference. If you remember, maybe not everyone knows, like for the KubeCon, we almost announced, and but we know that is not ready, so that we stop that. Just this is why we confuse. It is from us, we confuse them. We can inform of the Ubuntu and the other operating system team.
Okay. I think we'll agree on list of actions. One more topic. Before we have 11 minutes left, I'm kind of wrapping up already. Is there any other topics beyond when we meet next time? Going once, going twice. Okay. So next week is the only working week in US, and then there is a Christmas and New Year. The question is, do you want to meet next week or we want to skip? I suggest we meet January 2nd next time. Any objections?
Sounds good to me. I guess meanwhile, if folks need anything, they can ping us on Slack if there's anything urgent.
Yeah, I don't expect too much attendance on January 2nd, especially from Europe. I think it's a little bit shifted there. But let's keep January 2nd meeting and get it from there. Okay.
Yep.
If there is nothing else, thank you everybody and have a great holiday season. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Cheers, everybody.